is Top Accolade African News Updates. I am Zoe Bifa Jackrich. Egypt withdrew the operating licenses of 16 tourism companies and referred them to the public prosecutor, accusing them of being responsible for the deaths of Egyptian pilgrims in Mecca. A crisis unit tasked with addressing the situation said medical and security sources say at least 530 Egyptians died during this year's pilgrimage to Mecca, while the statement from the unit, formed and headed by Prime Minister Mostafa Madbouly, said 31 deaths were confirmed as a result of chronic illness. The tourism companies, which facilitated the travel of those who died, did not provide them with services of any kind, including medical. The statement said, without naming the companies involved, the agencies are being blamed for sending pilgrims to Saudi on personal visas rather than Hajj visas that allow access to Mecca where Hajj rituals take place. Medical services offered by Saudi authorities to elevate the hardships of the pilgrimage are not offered to those traveling with a personal visa. The pilgrims who died had to walk through the desert into Mecca to avoid arrest or deportation, the statement added. Egyptian authorities also say those travel agencies did not provide the pilgrims with appropriate accommodation, adding that this caused pilgrims exhaustion due to the high temperatures. Egyptian authorities also documented 31 deaths among registered Egyptian pilgrims, citing chronic diseases as the cause of deaths. Ghana has reached an agreement in principle with two bondholder groups to restructure some $13 billion of international debts. It said taking it a step closer to completing its debt overhaul that has been years in the making. Under the agreement, bondholders will forgo about $4.7 billion of their claims and provide cash flow relief of about $4.4 billion during the period of Ghana's current financial support. The formal launch of the consent solicitation is expected in upcoming weeks, the government said in a statement. The agreement will provide Ghana a path to economic recovery through significant debt relief and provision of cash flow, the committee representing international bondholders said in a statement. While welcoming the deal comes a week after Ghana struck another agreement with its bilateral creditors, paving the way for the IMF's executive board to sign off on a $360 million disbursement after the second review of Ghana's $3 billion program with the International Monetary Fund that is scheduled to end in 2026. The negotiations, however, had stalled in April after the proposed deal failed to meet the IMF's debt sustainability analysis requirements, and both sides were under pressure to finalize an agreement before December elections in Ghana. Investors are watching Ghana's debt restructuring closely after Zambia's bondholders signed off on the Southern African nation's own debt overhaul, which was more than 3 years in the making. Niger's junta has confirmed that rebels damaged an oil pipeline carrying crude oil to neighboring Benin. The Patriotic Liberation Front, which is fighting for the release of former President Mohamed Bazoum, who was overthrown in a coup last July, said it was behind the attack earlier this week. It has threatened to target oil installations and called on the Chinese companies that run the pipeline to end the support for the military regime. It's the latest setback to hit the newly opened 2,000 kilometers, that is 1,243-mile pipeline, as relations between Niger and Benin continue to sour. State media said the malicious individuals who had sabotaged parts of the pipeline would be apprehended and prosecuted. Footage aired on state-run broadcaster Tele Sahel showed the damage in Niger's southern Zinda region, with an oil spill stretching out into the bush. The pipeline was formally launched at the end of last year and links Niger's Agadem oil field to Benin coast and is set to be vital to both economies. But its future has been in jeopardy following last year's coup, when regional sanctions were imposed on Niger. In February, the regional bloc ECOWAS agreed to lift them and borders were allowed to be reopened. Benin's economy had also been hit by trade block and was anxious for imports and exports to resume, but Niger decided to keep its borders closed to goods from Benin, alleging its neighbor was hosting French forces that were training others to destabilize Niger. A high court in Namibia declared the two colonial-era laws that criminalized same-sex acts between men unconstitutional in a landmark win for the LGBTQ community in the Southern African country. The case was brought by Namibian activist Friedel Dausab with the support of British-based non-governmental organization Human Dignity Trust. Contextual same-sex activity is prohibited in more than half of 54 African countries, according to ILGA, an international organization supporting LGBTQ rights campaigners say that while convictions under the law laws of sodomy and unnatural sexual offences are relatively rare in Namibia. They have perpetuated discrimination against the LGBTQ community and made gay men live in fear of arrest. John Nakuta, a law professor at the University of Namibia, said the court's order can be appealed by the Namibian government within 21 days. Namibia inherited the laws when it gained independence from South Africa in 1990 through same-sex acts between men were initially criminalized. Under colonial rule, South Africa has been decriminalized same-sex sexual activity and is the only country on African continent to allow LGBTQ couples to adopt children, marry, and enter civil unions. Last year, Uganda enacted one of the world's harshest anti-LGBTQ laws, which included the death penalty for aggravated homosexuality, despite widespread condemnations from the West. That is the size of top accolade African news updates. You can follow us on our social media platforms as displayed on your screen. Happy Monday.